The United States stands with the brave people of Ukraine. We stand with you. You've been a great leader. And by the way, we have a famous thing that occurs once a year. We pick the Man of the Year in Time magazine. You are the Man of the Year in the United States of America.
No. No, you're not our Man of the Year. Not even close, Short King. Good evening. Thanks for tuning in to Real America with Dan Ball tonight, folks. Sorry, I cannot start this show off with a smile tonight. I can't even muster that up after watching the disgusting, ridiculous display of political theater yesterday in my house, in our house, and what went on between House and Senate Democrats and Mr. Zelensky, and also that meeting with Biden. Truly, truly disgusting. Joe Biden yesterday welcoming the Ukrainian President Zelensky to the White House, hailing him as a hero and Man of the Year. You just heard him right there in the Oval Office. This was Mr. Zelensky's first trip to Washington. It was all kept hush-hush, secret to get him in. Wow. This was on the heels of Biden begging for $37 billion more, but the Senate now approving the omnibus, which includes $45 billion more, on top of the $66 billion we've already given them, plus the $1.7 billion Joe just authorized a few days ago. If my math is right, we're somewhere around $111 billion to the country of Ukraine of our money, folks. While our borders wide open, while the number one killer 18 to 45-year-olds in this country is fentanyl due to an open border, while you're paying $4 or $5 for gas and milk, while our military is being disgraced and denigrated with woke BS. Shall I go on with all the issues at home while we send over $100 billion to fight a proxy war with Russia? Because our commander-in-chief, alleged that is, doesn't have the you-know-whats to call both of them on the carpet and demand they get to the peace table, because that's not what they want. It's not what the military-industrial complex wants. It's not what these senators who signed off on the omnibus bill today, giving all that money to Ukraine, want. They want their coffers full of our money to do what they want with it. Because that money's not going to make it to Ukraine. In the video, you'll see Zelensky shows up wearing a green sweatshirt and some cargo pants and combat boots to symbolize he is a war-hardened president who hasn't been not in the country while the war's been going on, but he's been there the whole time, I'm sure. Anyway, besides the visit to the White House and the announcement of all that money, then Zelensky had to go beg, because that's what he did. He went and gave a speech in our house, and he begged for more money. But here's what killed me. If you didn't watch the speech, I had to. It's research. I want you to watch the moment he tells our members of Congress and the American people that the billions we've given him already are not enough. And these men and women that allegedly represent us chuckle about it. If this doesn't disgust you and pushes you to want every piece of trash kicked out of office in that building, then you're not an American. You're not a patriot. Listen and watch this garbage.
We have artillery. Yes. Thank you. We have it. Is it enough? Honestly, not really. To ensure Bakhmut is not just a stronghold that holds back the Russian army, but for the Russian army to completely pull out, more cannons and shells are needed.
Oh, honestly, it's enough. It was enough when we crossed a few billion, Mr. Zelensky. The question every person should be asking themselves is, why? Why are we putting so much money into Ukraine? Why? When our country is facing some of the biggest problems we've seen in American history. You heard GOP leader, for now, Mitch McConnell say earlier this week that helping Ukraine was the number one priority for the United States and for Republicans. He said that. Not the energy crisis we're facing. Nope. Not the border, like I said. Not 41-year high record inflation. No. not criminals running through the streets, smash and grab, hurting, killing people. No! Just listen to more of this garbage.
But I want you to know, President Zelensky, I want you to know that all the people of Ukraine to know as well. The American people have been with you every step of the way, and we will stay with you. We will stay with you for as long as it takes. As I said, Mr. President, you don't have to worry. We are staying with Ukraine as long as Ukraine is there.
We're staying with Ukraine as long as it takes. How long is that? How long are you going to use Ukraine as your money laundering piggy bank, Jojo? Now, during his speech in our house, here was another disgusting display. I couldn't believe this. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi receiving a Ukrainian flag from Zelensky, bearing signatures of soldiers from the battlefield. When they hand it over, just start showing it, because I'm about to get sick to my stomach. Watch this forced political theater kiss between the two leaders here, Auntie Nancy and Zelensky. I mean, again, you want to see political theater at its best. Right there it was. Or should I kiss the hand? Should I kiss the face? Oh, don't get too close. How about holding our flag up inside of our house? I don't know. Just asking. Could we do that? Could we maybe signal to the American people, Nancy and Kamala? I forgot you were up there. We haven't seen you for weeks or months. Could you signal to us you're looking out for us? How about veterans that are ignored, homeless in the street, dealing with PTSD? There's another one. The list goes on and on. I can keep bringing them up. Joining us now, former advisor to Defense Secretary under President Trump, and a guy with an opinion like me about this whole Ukraine debacle under the Joe Biden regime, our friend retired Colonel Doug Macgregor. Colonel, I don't think in my 48 years on this rock I have ever seen a more grotesque display of political theater in our house. And I've been watching politics since I was a kid. My grandma that raised me was a Reaganite. She loved Reagan. And I have never seen something like that. That was disgusting last night.
Well, it certainly was theater, Dan. You've got that right. Americans need to understand that they're watching a couple of things happen. The first is a massive wealth transfer. It's not necessarily going to Ukraine. Some of that money will end up in Ukraine. At this point, we're already paying for the army, for the bureaucracy, for the state. But that's actually minor in terms of expense. The largest portion of the money just goes to DOD to replace equipment that is being sent and then subsequently moves to the defense industries, who profit enormously. The donors who keep the politicians in office are then rewarded because of their investments with the defense industries, and they then take some of that money and recycle it back into the politicians on the Hill as an expression of gratitude. Thank you for transferring all this wealth to us. Here is your cut. So that's why you had so many Republicans desert, go ahead and support the left, because they're really part of the uniparty. They're all enriching themselves. So that's the first piece of theater. The second piece of theater, which Americans don't really understand either, is that the Ukrainian army in the Donbass in eastern Ukraine is on the verge of collapse. They've taken hundreds of thousands of casualties. They're way north of 100,000 dead, closing in on 150,000 dead. The 93rd Ukrainian Army Brigade was just withdrawn from Bakhmut, which has been turned into a Ukrainian bloodbath by the Russians, and they left after suffering 70% casualties. For them, that means that out of 4,000 men, only 2,800 were left behind. In other words, 70% were left behind. They pulled out with about 1,200 men. That's a catastrophe. Wow. That's what's really happening. And when the Russians finally launch their offensive, Americans are going to watch this entire house of cards collapse. And then the real question is, will someone stand up and finally put an end to this utterly false narrative, which has enriched lots of people here, but hasn't done much good for the United States, as you point out?
And how about we point this out? Has it done any good for the Ukrainian people, the innocent people caught in the middle? No. That's what they keep trying to pull at our heartstrings, so you can open up our purse strings, is help the people. Hey, I'm all for helping innocent people. How about the innocent American people are getting screwed right now on how many different things I listed? But you're not helping them by dragging this war out for another year, because we're almost at a year now, where nothing's happened. And by the way, Colonel, you just threw out numbers and battles I've never heard or seen anywhere in mainstream.
No, good news is the only thing that's reported, and it's supposedly Ukrainian good news.
Right.
In reality, we haven't had much good news from Ukraine for a long time. This whole thing is going to come to a halt. There's no question about it. The question is, will anybody notice? Because other than you and a few other people, the mainstream media really doesn't cover this.
No.
And they could simply change the subject. Yeah, something else President Biden said at the end. He said, not only will we support Ukraine as long as it takes, he said, we will support Ukraine as long as it's there.
Yeah, I heard that.
That was his last comment.
Yeah, what do you make of that? As long
And
as
Ukraine
it's
is not going to Ukraine is not going to be there much longer the way things are headed. That's the sad truth.
Wow.
And we don't want to rescue them. See, this is the problem. The real danger is that once it becomes clear the whole fraud is collapsing, there'll be voices in Washington saying, well, let's send in our troops with the Poles. The Poles can provide what we need in addition to the troops we don't have. We can bring in Romanians, and we can somehow or another recover from this disaster. No, we can't. We're not prepared to fight a war in that region against Russia. Russia is prepared to fight a war, however, against us. You don't go into an area when you're not prepared. We don't have the ammunition. We don't have the replacements. We don't have the equipment. This is not the time and the place to do that. So the right thing to do is the thing that we have refused to do, and that is to urge Zelensky, and frankly, since we control the purse strings, simply tell him, stop and negotiate.
Yeah. Well, and you saw President Trump put out, I think yesterday on Truth, that this war would be over. Actually, he was speaking with our Chanel Rion here at OAN. And he said it'd be over in a day if I were commander-in-chief tomorrow, because I'd make a call to both of them. And I'd demand it, and we would start talking about sanctions that would crush Russia, and we'd tell Zelensky, like you just said, you're going to negotiate, and he'd get them both to the table and end this damn war. But you don't hear about it from Biden whatsoever because of what you just laid out in your first soundbite about how everybody's making money off this. And how fitting is it, I'm going to circle back to the omnibus bill as we wrap things up, Colonel, because that bill getting approved by the Senate and 18 defectors, Blunt, Boozman, Capito, Collins, Cornyn, Cotton, Graham, Inhofe, McConnell, Moran, Murkowski, Portman, Romney, Rounds, Shelby, Thuney, Wicker, and Young. Screw all 18 of you. Those are the 18 Republicans who sided with Dems to push this $1.7 trillion omnibus through that's going to put $45 billion more towards the war. And as the Colonel just told you, it's not going to end up in Ukraine in the way of ammunition and guns and tanks. It's going to go right back to the military-industrial complex and politicians on both sides of the aisle. So why not ram it through while you're still in charge of the House before the end of the year? It's all a game, it's all theater, and it's all to enrich them. And Colonel, I'm amazed you're one of the only ones speaking up. So I hope you're watching your six, because I don't hear many other folks telling the truth.
Well, Dan, you and I are not on the payroll.
That's right.
Everybody else who's supporting this is benefiting.
Oh, what to do. Colonel, I'm going to end it.
Merry Christmas.
That's exactly how I was going to end it. You got a tree behind you there in our D.C. studio. I don't know if it's going to be that merry after they pulled this fast one right in the last 11th hour, but Merry Christmas to you, sir, and thank you for always keeping it straight for our viewers and telling them the truth.
Sure, thank you, Dan.
Take care, Doug.